Hi, everybody. Welcome back. Today's episode, we're continuing the case of Zachary Young, the ex-CIA operative slash Navy SEAL slash my hero, is taken on CNN for defamation, a news outlet. Imagine that, for saying something about him that wasn't true. So far we have heard from the plaintiff, who was on the stand for 3 days, and now we're gonna hear from the architect of the story, Alex Markhardt. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the channel. So glad to have you guys still here. Uh, 2025 has just gone off with a bang. Started out with COVID, then it went on to these snowstorms and getting snowed in, and now having a tooth extracted. Yeah, banner year so far. I can't imagine what's in store for me for the rest of the year. Anyway, we're going to talk about today Alex Markhardt's testimony. Now, according to the plaintiff, he is the architect of this story. And I'll tell you how this came about. He was contacted by Jill Kornetsky in early October, and he knew Jill to be an activist. Well, I'm going to rewind a bit back to the plaintiff's testimony, where he contacts the plaintiff. Actually is the one that reaches out to Jill Kornetsky, believing that she is with an NGO. Now, apparently he had this ability to know what people were looking at his Facebook profile, and he could reach out to whoever that was that he could see looking at his profile. He believed that she was working with NGOs, which are nonprofit organizations, to get people out of Afghanistan, and was reaching out to him maybe for some assistance or somebody that, she knew that needed to get out. So he reaches out to her, and I don't know if you recall, they have kind of a heated exchange as soon as she finds out he's charging large amounts of money. He, instead of disengaging with her right away when he found out she did not have a corporate sponsor, he just goes on with the conversation, and not to his benefit. He ends up calling her some nasty names, and before he disengages and blocks her. But according to Alex Markhardt, that was Zachary Young's MO. Anytime he would be contacted and he would find out they didn't have a sponsor, he would just drop the conversation like a hotcake. And that's not untrue. I mean, that's what Alex would do whenever he was contacted. If these people didn't have sponsors, he might play with them for a little while. I call it playing with them. Like, oh, hey, run for the border, see how far you get. But he, they didn't have sponsors. He knew these people weren't serious. They weren't even Afghan citizens. Jill Kornetsky is not an Afghan citizen. Neither were the other people that reached out to him at the behest of Alex Markhardt. So after this, conversation that takes place between Jill and the plaintiff, Zachary Young, in which it doesn't end so well, and he's calling her names, she reaches out to CNN and gets a hold of Alex Markhardt and says, hey, I got a story for you. People are charging exorbitant amounts of money to these Afghan people who can't afford to pay. And he just latched on. Whoa, great idea. So he starts hashing it out with her in several emails. But and he says this a lot during his testimony. No, that's not the story I was telling. No, that's not this. This was about blackmail. No, it was, or black markets. No, it wasn't about black markets. It was about regular Afghan people. He goes, I didn't want to tell the story of Bloomberg or Audible, who Zach had said were corporations that could be used as references. He says, I did not reach out to those people because that wasn't the story I was telling. I was just telling the story about regular Afghan people who were being asked to pay large, very large sums of money. And by way of example, this Zachary Young, when people said they couldn't afford that, he would just drop the conversation. Now, he interviewed, Alex Markhardt interviewed like 7 people. Of those 7, where he has communications back and forth with them, not necessarily interview, but as part of his investigation, which he says is to learn as much about a story as you possibly can learn it, so you've got all the sides of the story. I think he was missing a side. Anyway, so he doesn't reach out to Audible or Bloomberg. He does try to reach out to Bloomberg, and he does get a hold of someone at Bloomberg, but he doesn't report that part. That's the story he was telling. So, and as for Audible, he thought the same thing I did. Why in the world is, Audible records books. They're recorded books on tape. So why do they have people in Afghanistan? Well, what is the need to corporately evacuate anybody from Afghanistan? I don't know, but they paid Zachary Young to do it. In any case, he was wondering the same thing. Why, so he was thinking, this is another thing that makes this guy kind of fishy. So he reaches out to, he says he kept calling Zachary Young and Zachary would not take his call. But it's clear, because he was saying he was doing it on this app. He wasn't using it. It wasn't a regular phone call where he dials a number. He was trying to get a hold of Zachary Young on an app called Signal. And because it's unencrypted, or encrypted, because it's encrypted. I think that's what I want to say. It's encrypted. So, and when Alex wouldn't respond, he'd say, oh, he seems corrupt. He's not responding. But he said he got Alex's number from the other woman that worked in his office, Katie Bo Lillis, who was communicating with Zachary Young. But when at the time and place he's trying to call Zachary Young, you can see side by side on screen that on Zachary's Signal, there's no call. No, there's no missed call. There's nothing there as evidence that this reporter, ever tried to contact Zachary Young in advance, other than, the day before. Because we know the day before, this reporter certainly did reach out to Zachary. Zachary doesn't respond until the next day, within 24 hours, but he doesn't respond until the next day, at which point in time he only has 2-hour lead time on this story to respond to the story. And he's saying, I need time. I need to check with my sources, check with my lawyers. Okay. No. Yeah. So this guy denied that the plaintiff attorney was really good walking him through. So did you believe going into this story that you were going to catch a scammer? And he goes, I go into the story, yes, I'm thinking, okay, is this a scam? Is there some deception here? Is there fraud? The plaintiff walked him through every kind of, verb you could think of to describe something nefarious that might be going on with Zachary Young. And he says, well, whenever I go into a story, I'm looking for things like that. And I certainly was in this case, but I didn't find it. And therefore, I didn't say any of those things about him in the news report. even though this banner was up the report the whole time, they called it something. What did they call that? It has a name that I had never heard of before. Where is it? What do they call it? A Chiron? Anyway, it's a banner. It's a banner. That banner was up there the whole time he's running this story. And he goes, my story was factually based and accurate. And he's not apologetic. He says, I don't owe him any apology. I didn't report anything that wasn't fact or didn't come right out of his mouth. In other words, he took, so like I said, he interviewed 7 people. 5 of those were not connected to Zachary Young in any way. But he would ask, this reporter would ask those people, hey, you ever heard of Zachary Young? No, never heard of Zachary Young. Well, he's doing blah, blah, blah. And they would say, yeah, I've heard of other people that are doing that. Well, do you have any names? Do you know of anybody who that paid a large amount of money and got out of Afghanistan successfully, having paid that large amount of money? And he couldn't find anybody. He couldn't find one single person that had paid anyone, Zachary Young or others. He said there were other people doing this. He had focused on one lady, another lady who he had her picture. He had all the stuff. He said she was doing the same thing. But her name doesn't go up underneath the banner on the lead report. No. So he denies over and over again that he was chasing a scandal. No, when I went into it, I was pitching it as a scandal, but it didn't turn out to be that way. So I wanted you to see the pitch email. So he did clarify that, Zachary Young, to my knowledge, never took any money from Afghanistan's. He could never find anybody to say that. There was no evidence that he exploited any Afghan people, but he was exploiting the situation. Yes, that's business. Putting the onus on the person to get a sponsor. So it's this reporter's contention that Zachary Young was, if these people had the money, he was going to get them out. But when he found out when they couldn't get the money, he contends that he was doing more than corporate evacuations, that he would, if someone had the money, he could get them out. That this is what he was representing. But he couldn't ever find anybody that had gotten out after paying this large amount of money from any of these people. So here is the pitch email. So he gets his idea from Jill, and he pitches this to his boss. And I do want to show you the email. Let me bring that up here. Where is it? I got all this fancy schmancy stuff going on here, and now I don't see it. Do it right, Rebecca. Oh, here it is. Here we go. Is this it? Okay. So, subject, pitches. Title, extortion of desperate Afghans. Could be done for $10,000 per person or $100,000 total. He had to say no. See, this is just an excerpt from this. Over on LinkedIn, a man named Zachary Young has told people he can get people from Kabul to Pakistan for $75,000 for one vehicle, or $14,500 to the UAE, and they get a visa. Pressed by one activist on the numbers, Young admits availability is extremely limited and demand is high. That's how economics work. We would interview, and it's redacted, the name of this person, talk to people who engaged with Young and contact him ourselves, and speak with Afghans still there who are being told this is their best way out. We would try to find people who did end up paying and examine to what extent this extortion versus fraud. So this is how he's going. This is his mindset going into this. But he clarifies, we didn't find it. They couldn't find anybody. They couldn't find any victims of this extortion or fraud. So 1 hour after his pitch is approved by his boss, he puts up another email. He texts someone. I think this may have been Jill. And he lets them know that he pitch worked. He's going to do the story. We're going to nail this Zachary Young, Mfucker. Yeah. That's so now it seems like he's kind of focusing on Zach and not anybody else, even though he said he found other people doing this. He's focusing this on Zach. So he was asked by the plaintiff attorney, so you believe this is a scam, right? And he's hemming and hawing. He goes, well, let me show you, another communication that you had. So this was a different communication. He says, do I believe charging people $15,000 a head to get out is a scam? 100%. But I can't say that per se. No, you can't. Because you can't find anybody that you charge that money to. Okay. So he decides he wants to get Zachary Young on the phone, on camera, for theater. He's like, it's not theater, it's reporting. Even though they caught a camera clip that didn't make the air story, but it was a clip where he's going, theater. Yeah. So Katie Bo Lillis is another person that had been in contact with Zachary Young. She actually works as part of Alex Markhardt's team. And she was working with him on this story. And when he communicated to her that he wanted to get him on the phone, she's like, do you want me to prep him? Because she's been in contact with him and she was willing to contact him again and let him know, because she had already told him, hey, we're doing a story on this. She wanted to contact him and let him know, we're going to be calling you and here's what we, want to talk about and blah, blah, blah. He's like, no. I want to cold call him. Yeah. So they film him standing at a table, and he's not calling him. Let's get this straight. It's not a phone number he's dialing. This is on Signal, the call that he never got. And it's the plaintiff's contention that he never really dialed that number. Although we hear a phone ringing like 7-8 times, there's no answer. It's the plaintiff's contention that this was a fake phone call. The phone call had never been made during this little theater film that they were creating of him listening to the phone ring and him not answering, which did make the video, the final piece that aired. But he said, yeah, absolutely. This was the number Katie Bo Lillis gave me, the Signal number. The Signal, it's not a number. It's like FaceTime. He's just trying to get him to answer a FaceTime call, and he's not answering. Yeah. Interesting, huh? Okay. So plaintiff asked him, what does FFS mean? And he says, you want me to curse in court? He goes, whoa, what does it mean? So he said the words, for F-U-C-K, sake. So what the context here is, he's gone back and forth with Katie Bo because, this story's coming out in 2 hours. The plaintiff finally contacts him. He gets the email from the day before. He finally looks at it. It was actually from the night before. He finally looks at it the next day. He contacts Alex Markhardt and he says, I need to know what this is about, what it is you're going to be doing, what you're using. And I don't want my name to be used and blah, blah, blah. And I need to go talk to my lawyer. And he's telling him this is not enough time, And so in response to that communication, Alex Markhardt texts somebody else, FFS, for fuck's sake. Then he says, fucking Young just texted. Just texted me. Because he wanted to run that piece the way he wanted to run that piece. So, but he didn't hold the story. He did not hold the story. Of course, he gives the plaintiff a deadline, but it's an unreasonable deadline. You're running a story in an hour and 54 minutes. How am I going to meet that deadline? So he said, were you accusing him of using a black market? And he says he was engaging in exploitation and taking advantage of Afghans as part of a market. He kept saying market, not using the term black, as part of a market. Then he was saying that there's no guarantee of safety or success, which is what was run in the Chiron, the banner. No guarantee of safety or success. And he says, well, wouldn't you agree with me that nobody could guarantee someone's safety out of Afghanistan? Wouldn't you agree with that? He goes, well, the Taliban, maybe. Nobody could guarantee anybody's safety or success out of Afghanistan back then. That was not unique to Mr. Young. And then he talks about, I thought this was a really good analogy. He says, you're a reporter. You're profiting off of the wars. You've been to Syria. You've been to Afghanistan. You've been to the Gaza. You've been to Ukraine. You're making money, right? You're not doing all this for free. And he tried to back off of that. No, I'm not doing it for profit. I'm not, excuse me? You're getting a paycheck. Same thing that plaintiff was trying to do, get a paycheck. Yeah. I thought that was an interesting analogy. You're running all these stories and he would make it very clear, this reporter would make it very clear in any of his communications, listen, all I can do is tell your story. I cannot get you out of Afghanistan, but I can tell your story. So he was asked, why did you run this story? Why was this story so important to you? And he says, well, he thought it was a huge, important story, important part of American history. He talked about his background, that he had been a news reporter with ABC and then had gone on to CNN. And then in 2022, after this piece, I don't think this piece had anything to do with it, but he gets a promotion at CNN. But he was very clear during his testimony. Yes, I knew Zachary Young wasn't the only one doing this, but apparently he's the only one they reported on. There was another reporter that was doing a similar story, and he was advised to contact this other reporter. And he says sometimes if there's two reporters that are working on similar stories, we'll get together and we'll compare information and see if we can help each other out. Well, he contacted this other reporter, and she was doing a story about how U.S. citizens are cleaning out their bank accounts and 401ks to help get people out of Afghanistan. So kind of an opposite end of the spectrum type of a story, not quite the story he wanted to tell. He wanted to tell a scandalous story. That didn't fit into it. So Jill Konetsky, the original person, was able to get him in contact with someone who got out of Afghanistan, but he had gotten out for free from one of these NGOs, these relief organizations. So it really did not fit the narrative that he was going for either. Because he asked this guy, have you ever heard of Zachary Young? Nope. Do you know anyone charging money that actually got out? Nope. So no victims to this black market. What are the terms he used? Scam, deception, fraud, preying. Yeah. CNN, write the check. Write the check. I'm just saying. I hope there's some negotiations going on in the background, because the jury's going to be, I just don't think there's any way around them finding defamation here. He wanted to have the entire story, but didn't really make a great attempt to talk to Zachary Young or any of those other people that he knew to complete the story. So, and when you don't have a victim, how are you claiming all of these people are being scammed if you don't even know who the people are? You can't find one single person that's been scammed. All right. So that's the story for today. That's the coverage for today. I will bring you another episode tomorrow. We're actually on day 8 today of testimony. So you're almost caught up. We're missing one day, but blame the tooth. All right, guys, have a great day. I'll see you in the next video. Take care.